Okay, this morning we're going to play the sleuth. We've got a sign here. It's for the Sherlock Holmes fans, and there's quite a few of them out there from what I can see. Sold quite a few of these signs, and they seem to really like Sherlock. And of course we have his logo on here, plus the name. And it makes for an interesting cut. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to cut this out of a nice piece of cherry, which makes for a real nice looking sign. And we're going to put it on an improvised base. That means I'm going to take another piece of wood and I'm going to improvise a fancy looking little bottom for it. And we'll put this thing together. I have a customer that wants this done up, and we'll see just how well it comes out. So let's get to work on it. Okay, the first thing we want to do is cut out the pattern naturally. And that's fairly easy. It's the easy part of the project. Cut that off. Cut a nice straight bottom here. The old scrap. Now, the board we're going to use, as I said, is a nice piece of cherry, and it's about 10 inches wide and about 4.5 inches tall. And of course, we do the standard put the tape down deal. Good old masking. So I'm going to take 3 pieces of this. And we want to remember to turn it around so that you have the overlap going toward the top. Makes it a lot easier to peel it off later on when you got it on the project. Then we take the glue stick. I use the Staples brand, which I find very nice. And give it a good smudging all around. Stick to everything, of course. And put old Sherlock down here on the paper. On the board, I mean, not the paper. Make sure the edges are inside. Okay, flatten that out, and we are just about ready here. Now I gotta go and drill some entry holes for the letters and the logo. Should be fairly simple, do on the drill press. And then I'll meet you guys over at the scroll saw and we'll start to cut this thing out. Okay, here we are at the scroll saw. We got our entry holes all drilled out. The blade is all set. I use the popular number 5 reverse tooth blade, people's blade, and nicely taut in there so it rings out with a nice little note. And these are the Flying Dutchman blades, by the way. They come with a little notch up at the top, and you're always able to put them in the correct way so that the top of the blade is positioned properly. Alright, so we're going to start cutting here. I'll probably speed some of this up. You don't need to watch all of it, but we want to cut this out. Now the lettering here, of course, is sort of a block lettering. Makes it a little bit tricky to cut, but it's worth it because it looks nice and it accents the character of Sherlock Holmes. So let's start with the letters here. Here we go. Okay, got the first internal portion of a letter done. It was going kind of fast, so I had to stop it occasionally, but I think we've got a good speed on it now. Fairly sharp blade in there, so you don't really need a high speed. All right, we'll do the bottom of the R right now. And of course the top of the R. Get all these done properly. Alright. My scroll saw is an Excalibur, and it's getting on in age, actually. I think I'm going to keep up with this business. Might have to replace it. Not sure with what, however. I'd like to get another Excalibur. This has been an absolute dream machine to work with over the years. Must be about 15, 20 years old now. Okay, here we go. Would help if I put pressure on that. Okay. Okay, I got all the internal parts of the letters cut, all the small pieces, and I like to do those first because I want to hold on to the real estate that I've got here as long as I can. This pattern, by the way, is available on my Etsy store. If you'd like to try cutting this out for yourself, experiment with it, just go over there. It's relatively cheap, and you'll have the actual pattern to work from. Okay, let's do a bigger chunk here now. Okay, we got the internal piece cut out with some letters. When I design my patterns, I design them all in Photoshop Elements, which is a nice, easy program to use and meets all the requirements that I need anyways. And when you do, if you do design your own patterns, you want to watch out for fragility. Don't make your letters too thin. These are a little bit thin, but it's part of the font. You couldn't avoid it. But try not to get blocky letters if you can that look good. And if you got something like a logo like this with a spyglass on the top, a magnifying glass, make sure it's pinned down in a couple of places. You don't want to have it floating in the air here because it won't have anything to hold on to. And if you only have one piece holding on, it's going to be very fragile. So be sure to check for that carefully if you decide to design your own patterns. Okay, let's do the inside of the... I see I forgot to put another hole here. I'm going to have to go drill. I always seem to manage to forget one of the holes. Never fails. Okay, now I'm going to cut this logo out that I built from a magnifying glass and the logo itself. But I want to try to get a little bit of the pipe on it. You only really need to suggest that the pipe is there. So I'm not going to cut all the way through it. It will only weaken it more. So I'll cut a little bit on either side, and that'll suggest that there's a pipe there. I should say it'll suggest that there's a pipe bowl there. And the mind will fill in the rest of it when people look at this. Same with the top of the hat and the bottom of the body. You could even cut those in a little bit. You don't want to weaken it too much, though. So you have to make some judgment calls here. Okay, we're all set now to do some cutting of the letters. Along the top, and actually cut the whole outline out. So what we'll do is we'll take that out of there, put our blade down, and let's get cutting. Okay, finished our complete cut. I want to point out a couple of things. As I was going through, I decided to edit my pattern a little bit here by rounding over those S's a little better. And you'll notice too on the corners I like to round them over. I don't like to have them square as such, so I did a little bit of rounding over on both sides here. Remember, your pattern is only a guide. Don't be afraid to experiment with it. Try different things. You'll be amazed at what you come up with sometimes. Okay, we've got our sign. Let's bring this over to the bench and take a look at it. Okay, here's our Sherlock Holmes sign. Nicely cut out. Just take the, when you take the pattern off, of course, those lines disappear. So if you didn't quite get something exactly right on the pattern, which you don't really need to do anyways, nobody's ever going to notice it, because the lines are gone. You've got just the basic lettering there. I do an awful lot of lettering signs, and they all seem to work out very nicely. Pull all this straight up if you can. Remember, we're going against the overlap there now, so it should come off pretty easy, and it is. If I were doing it the other way, I'd have a lot more that I'd have to go back and pull off. I have a little bit here, but it's only in. Okay, there you go. You got your sign nicely cut out. Going to need some sanding, obviously, to smooth it out. That's not a major problem. We can do that on the bench sander. Now, what I've got left over here, hate to waste any wood, of course, so I'm going to take this piece here, which is the outline of what I just cut out, take it back to the, straighten that out a bit, take that back to the scroll saw, and I'm going to sort of improvise a cut here as I go along to make the base. And this is going to be a top portion of the base. It's going to be a double layered base, and you'll see what I mean as we go along here. But you just take your blade and cut it with a little bit of freedom. Pretend you're just driving through the country and going to run into different portions here and spin around and whatever, so forth and so on. It's called improvising the base. Okay, so I'll go put this over there and we'll work on that. And we're going to do that little improvisation I told you about. I like a lot of roundness in my pattern, so we'll keep that in mind as we improvise. And we cut off all this other nasty stuff. Okay, we have our start of our double layered base here. Let's take this back to the bench. Okay, we're at the bench again, and we'll peel off this tape and the old pattern. We don't need those anymore. Already done the damage. Take that off of there like that. And we have a nice top layer for a base. Now, I don't really worry too much about what I've got here. I look at it and I see what looks good to me, and what looks good to me usually does look good to the customer too. What we're going to do is we're going to mount this right on top of the remaining base. But we got to do some fixing up first. We got to round over all the edges here using the router. We got to sand it down so it looks nice and smooth, and we got a little more work to do with it as well. Okay, the first thing we want to do is round over the corners on this top base and make it look nice and round on either side. So let's do that right now. We'll use the disc sander to do it. Okay, we got a nice round edge on each side right now. Let's go over to the router. Okay, we're over at the router now. And what I'd like to do, first of all, we decide which side we're going to use. Probably this will be the up side. So what we're going to do is go all around the outer edges using the 1/4-inch router bit here. And that'll make it a nice, interesting little curve on the sides. Okay, that did a nice little job. All the edges are nice and smooth now. A little bit of sanding, we should be able to keep that the way it is. If you don't have a router, then you could always get some sandpaper, go around the edges and do that, round everything over. I'm going to use my sanding mop to just smooth everything out finally. Okay, I got the main sign sanded down nicely, and the base, of course, rounded over. But I'm going to add a second layer for a base with a contrasting wood, in this case some walnut. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this down on top here, and we want to add a little bit of life to this. So rather than just doing it as a plain old rectangle, we're going to take this and we're going to give it, let's make sure we got the best side here. It's got to be cut off. Okay. Alright, so we can leave it like that. We're going to take it and I'm going to just draw a line here, arbitrary line, to how far out we need it actually. Okay, now I'm going to take this over to the scroll saw, and once again I'm going to improvise my cut to come out sort of parallel to this pattern here, but a little bit different also. And we won't really know what it looks like until I actually do it. I will probably take both of these and put them in the pattern book, so you can cut them this way if you like the way this looks, or you can cut your own, just as I'm doing now too. Okay, here we are. Scroll saw again, and let's do some cutting on the fly here. Okay, a little line we drew gives us something to judge our movement by. And this is what we end up with. There's going to be a second base, another layer. I'm going to round over the edges that I did with the other one on the disc sander. I won't bother to film that because you already saw that. And then we'll come back to the bench and take a look at what we're going to do. Okay, we got all the parts straightened out here. Everything's been sanded down. Cut this into a curvier looking piece for the base. Bottom doesn't really matter much, that's going to be down anyways. And what we're going to do now is glue these together, one on top of the other, to make an intricate and interesting little base for our Sherlock Holmes sign. Best way to do this probably is to take the glue. I'm using Tight Bond extended wood glue. Any glue will do. And just put a little bit on the bottom of the top layer. Don't need an awful lot on here. I'll cut out as much bleed out as possible. It goes right on top. Just sort of eyeball it. You don't really have to measure anything. Okay, let's paste it down. Now we take this and we put some glue at the bottom of this. Thin layer, I don't want too much again. I don't want too much bleed out on this. Okay, I like to overlap it on the openings like this. Makes it more interesting. So we'll put it like that. Once you got that set up, you need some clamps, of course, on the end here. First one there. Make sure everything is straight. Again, I'm just eyeballing this. Put on the front. Pull it down. You don't really need it on the back. You can if you want to, but I think that's more than enough right there. Okay, so we've got her all glued up, almost ready to go. I'm going to let that glue harden for a couple of hours. Then we'll come down and give it a spray with a clear spray. No stains are needed on this. Clear spray does a fine job as it is. Alright, well, I'll come back and actually what I'll probably do is spray it off camera. I don't think we need to do that on camera. I use the regular Rust-Oleum clear spray, usually the satin, which is kind of nice. And when it's all done, bring it back and we'll take a look at it and finalize this little project. Okay, we finished up the Sherlock Holmes sign. Put a couple of coats of sealer on it, clear sealer, the Rust-Oleum type. I think I used the satin one on here. And as you can see, came out looking pretty good. So you might want to try this little project. You can click the link down below to take you to my pattern. And in the little pattern book, I've also put a couple of other little patterns you might find interesting for free. And you can print out the pattern, download it right to your computer, print it out, and then cut this little baby out. I'll also put the two bases outlines in there. You can use those as patterns too if you don't want to improvise your own. Well, if you like this video, click the little like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I'll be doing more of these in the future. Thank you very much for watching.